So welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to come and join our first interview by PredictiveHire webinar today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Natalie and I'm a relationship manager here at SnapHire. Joining me today is Danielle from our client success team. We also have Nick from the PredictiveHire team, and he's the COO and Chief Customer Officer. I know myself, I have heard some great things about PredictiveHire from a few of our joint clients, and I'm really excited that we're able to share that today with the rest of our SnapHire clients. So I'll pass over to Danielle, who will kick us off.
Awesome, thanks so much, Natalie. So welcome everyone. As Natalie mentioned, thank you for taking the time to come and join our first interview by PredictiveHire webinar. Today we will be taking you through basically an introduction to First Interview by PredictiveHire and showing you how you can utilize the digital assessment to interview every candidate in depth and at scale, whilst also saving up to 95% on time and cost. So it is a really cool app, and as a very quick overview, it's basically an awesome app that ultimately makes recruitment faster, fairer and better. So we do like hosting interactive sessions. So at any stage throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit any questions and comments, feedback through the Q&A functionality, and we'll aim to answer all these questions together at the end. We'll also make sure that everyone who has registered gets a copy of the webinar to share with the rest of your team should you wish to, should some of your team not be able to make it today. So thank you again for joining us, and I will now hand over to Nick, who will be explaining to you a little bit more about First Interview by PredictiveHire, the benefits, and also running through a brief case study.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danielle. So PredictiveHire ultimately is a top of the funnel assessment that allows you to interview every single applicant who applies for a role. And we like to think of ourselves as the Oprah Winfrey of recruitment. Everyone walks away with an interview. Every candidate walks away with feedback in the form of a personality profile. And every candidate is assessed. So you're really able to tap in to your full talent pool, opposed to just the ones that you decide to progress. The great thing about this solution is it's super intuitive and interactive. It's in a format that candidates are used to, so it's conversational text that can be delivered either on a laptop, iPad, even on an iPhone or Android device. The great thing about this too is it is free of bias. So unlike a lot of assessments which may introduce bias in different components, whether it's visual or whether it's collecting personal information, our assessment only analyzes the responses to the actual questions. And we tailor these questions and the models depending on the various job families of our customers' needs. The last thing too is that every single applicant, we go into a detailed talent insights profile for the end customer. So not only do you get a score of how they were assessed, a recommendation to fit, you also get a breakdown of how they actually went against key areas like communication skills, around certain traits and personality attributes. Next slide. The key benefits of this is that all candidates are interviewed. So, you know, I've worked in the world of volume recruitment and I've managed talent teams, and one of the biggest issues is you simply can't actually interview all of the applicants. And so more often than not, you actually miss out on what we consider to be latent talent. Candidates that could very well be a great fit, they might have the right behaviors or personality attributes for a role, but you just don't have the resources more often than not to interview them all and do it in a way that's quite detailed without having an enormous impact on time. So no one misses out, which is also a really important brand value attribute in that every single one of your candidates gets to have the opportunity to put their best foot forward. Probably one of my favorite things about our solution is that we have automatic candidate feedback. And times like now, I guess this is more important than ever. Unemployment is the highest it's ever been globally. A lot of countries are in recession. And as a result, the volume of applicants is even higher. And there's a lot of people who are applying for roles they wouldn't traditionally apply for. More often than not, it's an automated response, you know, thanks, no thanks, or, you know, we're interested, you progress. What PredictiveHire allows is that every single one of your candidates gets a branded personality profile, which gives them 6 insights around their personality and coaching tips. Applicants absolutely love this, and we've actually seen positive improvement around consumer brand for particular consumer customers, one as much as 55% improvement on likelihood to shop with a consumer brand as a result of the experience, which is absolutely amazing. As I mentioned before, it is truly unbiased. So we don't use CV data, we don't use personal data. Everyone gets a fair go. And you're able to even see this throughout the recruitment process, from the start in terms of who's assessed, the distribution of that assessment by ethnicity and gender once they're being assessed, so that you can see that there isn't being bias introduced by the AI or automation, and then ultimately who you hire. So this really disrupts that bias process right at the beginning. Everything is real time, so you get instant scoring. And the great thing about this solution being integrated with SnapHire is this is all received with inside the SnapHire platform. So it's all automatic, all very quick. I mentioned before, you also get detailed candidate insights on the applicants. And we actually provide data-driven second interview questions. So these are recommended interview questions to delve deeper into areas of opportunity for that applicant. So even if they scored really well and say at the top of the applicant pool, there's always going to be areas to dive a little bit deeper. And as I mentioned briefly, we provide full quality and bias tracking. So you're able to see the quality and distribution of your candidate pool, how that sits relative to who you hire, all the way through to the gender and ethnicity of applicants and ultimately hires and outcomes. We don't do this by collecting their gender or ethnicity, but we actually use an algorithm. It's 80 to 90% accurate in identifying gender and ethnicity based on name. Next slide, please. So we're very proud to have worked with a shared client of SnapHire, and we've had some really stellar results at Spark New Zealand. So Spark New Zealand engaged us particularly for their contact center and sales recruitment. What that has allowed them to do is drive down time to hire by 33%. The reason they've been able to do this is they've disrupted their recruitment process, and a lot of the human hours that were spent on pre-screening, even first level assessment screening or first interview is now gone, and they progress their candidates to a second stage right after the assessment. Candidate satisfaction is at 90%, and 9 out of 10. So candidates absolutely love this experience. We have 99% positive sentiment also on feedback received from candidates. And you can see here a little quote from Paula, who is the head of talent at Spark New Zealand. And ultimately, you knew that efficiency and cost savings was really significant, but they've really felt the improvement in the quality of the hires and the diversity of the hires. Because the system isn't considering those factors, it more often than not actually showcases to you options to hire that wouldn't be the traditional ones that you would think of. People who are a really strong fit from a personality and behavioral attribute point of view, but may not necessarily have a resume or CV which reads the ideal candidate for this role. So that's a little bit about our solution. I'm going to hand back to Danielle for the next steps.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. That was a really, really good overview of First Interview by PredictiveHire. And I do see that we've had a question come through, but we will address these at the end altogether, if that's all right. So you may be sort of wondering now, how does it work within SnapHire? So at SnapHire, we wanted to create a pre-integrated platform to enable our customers to basically create the recruitment ecosystem of their dreams and desires. So this led to the launch of our SnapHire marketplace. Now, a lot of you will be familiar with our SnapHire marketplace. It can be accessed through the tab in SnapHire called SnapHire Marketplace, if you have the permission to do so. But for those of you who aren't as familiar, it's basically a platform where we provide a range of pre-integrated apps that you can utilize within your recruitment stream. So in the SnapHire Marketplace, you can browse for the various Airtel and third-party apps. You can filter by various types of apps. So for example, different apply apps, background checking apps or onboarding apps, just say. However, today we are focusing on our newest assessment app, which is FirstInterview by PredictiveHire. So once you have an account with PredictiveHire and you have completed the necessary setup requirements, you will be able to start using FirstInterview by PredictiveHire within your recruitment process. So if you are interested in installing the app, you would need to go to our SnapHire marketplace and click the install button. The setup is relatively easy and our client success team is there to support you through the setup should you want or need some support. As I mentioned before, some people are quite familiar with installing apps, however, some people aren't, which is absolutely fine. And you will need to map the FirstInterview assessments through something called Assessment Hub, which is basically our enabler app. So you need to map your assessments to 1, your workflow, or 2, to your job in SnapHire. And this is so the assessments can be available for you to start against a candidate. Our Assessment Hub app basically provides you with a central platform in order to manage your assessment apps. So as an easy way to integrate them into your recruitment process. Any default assessments that are mapped will apply to the workflow that you select, or alternatively, you can customize the assessment via the Assessment Hub panel, which is shown on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So if you do decide to customize a FirstInterview assessment per your job via the Assessment Hub, once you click Edit, you will be taken to the Assessment Hub portal specific to your job, which is shown in green on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You will be able to see a list of your buckets, and for every organization, your buckets will be different, but sort of follow a similar sort of process, and then the associated assessments that are mapped to that bucket. So once you click the 3 little dots between the buckets and the assessments, you'll be able to customize the assessments for your job. You'll be able to drag and drop the assessments that you would like available and take away any assessments that you want removed. When the slide deck is emailed to you after the webinar, you'll be able to click on the link that you can see in the little tip section, where you can see the little light bulb and you can view the solution article that we have available in our client portal for Assessment Hub. However, if you do, as I mentioned before, want any support or need any assistance on this, our client success team can walk you through the process. So once you have correctly set up the FirstInterview assessments that you would like to be available on your specific job, you will then be able to see the blue key icon that can be accessed from either the application details, which is what you can see on the top screenshot, or the application list view, which is what you can see on the bottom screenshot. So you can actually start the assessment from 2 different places. If you cannot see the blue P assessment icon for any reason, you'll just need to make sure that you have mapped it to the correct bucket. So for example, if you have not made the assessment available to be selected from the incoming bucket, just say, it won't be able to be selected. If you have mapped the assessment to the correct bucket, but you still cannot see the assessment, you just need to check a couple of things like that you have selected the correct workflow, depending on how you have set up your assessments, as they may be matched to some workflows and not others. So as FirstInterview is an app that helps you screen candidates, ideally it should be placed at the start of your recruitment process at the application stage, so i.e. in your incoming bucket. As each SnapHire site is configured differently per client, your first bucket may not be called incoming. It could, for example, be called application or applied, or something else that your team has decided to call the first bucket in your process, but it's basically when the candidates first apply. You can also have the FirstInterview by PredictiveHire assessments auto start for every incoming application, which is the recommended approach for FirstInterview by PredictiveHire, as it's intended for bulk screening / recruitment. But alternatively, if you do not want to use auto start for any reason, you can instead manually start the assessment per candidate. If you do want to manually start the assessment on a candidate, just like any other app that we have on our marketplace, once you have clicked into the PredictiveHire icon, it will display the Start Assessment icon. So once you select Start Assessment, a request is basically sent away to PredictiveHire and the assessment will be sitting with the candidate once the status reaches in progress. So once the assessment has been started, an email is sent to the candidate outlining the interview timeframes and a brief explanation of the process. So when they're ready, they are prompted to start their interview, which directs them to an online automatic text conversation. If a candidate does not complete an assessment in 5 days, the assessment expires and it's returned in an error status into SnapHire. So the recruiter will then be able to see that error status and will need to restart the assessment on the candidate. Questions are tailored based on the role you want to fill, and the non-intrusive conversation just takes minutes for the candidate complete, which Nick mentioned before. So generally, because the conversation is a text conversation, applicants tend to feel more comfortable using the system and do sort of in turn provide more honest answers. And FirstInterview aims to make the candidate experience a great one, again, as Nick mentioned before, and they have placed a focus on ensuring the technology is simple, easy to use, and also easily accessible by candidates. This is just a screenshot of what the candidate will see when a request is sent to their inbox. So when they click Start Interview, they will then be taken to FirstInterview. Before the candidate can start their assessment, they will need to enter in their email, phone number, and also agree to the privacy statement. And from here, they will automatically be taken to the online text conversation where further instructions are provided. So it's nice and clear for the candidate throughout the process. There is a screenshot showing what it looks like from a candidate's perspective. So that's the screenshot you can see in the middle. FirstInterview, as I mentioned before, also places a focus on continuous improvement. So at the end of every candidate interview, they are asked to provide some feedback on their experience using the assessment, and they are prompted to rate their experience in a scale and can optionally add in any additional comments. So as the candidate progresses through their assessment, this will be reflected in SnapHire. So you will be able to see in real time via visual cues what stage the candidate is at in the assessment process. So you'll be able to track the process by viewing the candidate within the job directly from SnapHire. The blue P icon will still show next to the candidate's name, as that's the icon that ultimately changes throughout the process. So as I mentioned earlier, you can also see that the interview has not been started when there is no border around the PredictiveHire icon, which is the icon you can see on the very left-hand side of your screen. If you click into the icon and try to start the assessment, but there has been an error for any reason, or the candidate has not completed the assessment within the 5 days, the icon will change to have an orange border around it and also show a red exclamation point. So if this happens, you just need to check the data against the candidate and retry the assessment. However, if you're unclear to why there is an error status, you can be in touch with either the SnapHire support team or we can refer you on to the PredictiveHire support team, and we'll liaise together to advise why the error status has occurred and what you need to do moving forward. So once the assessment has been started successfully, a request is then sent away to the PredictiveHire team to confirm receipt of the assessment. At this stage in the process, the border will change to a dotted orange line. When PredictiveHire has received and approved the request, the status will then change to in progress. And it's at the in progress stage when the assessment is sitting with the candidate. And at this stage, you'll be able to see that the border around the icon changes to a black dotted line. Once the candidate's interview has been completed, you'll see that the icon shows the result in either a red no, orange maybe, or green yes sort of screen. I'll explain this more in a moment and sort of expand on how you may want to use the results, but that is basically what it looks like. So at any time, you can click into the icon to review the stage the candidate's at, and once it's completed, when you click into the icon, it will show the score the candidate got and also give you a preview of their responses, which is awesome. So you don't actually need to log out of SnapHire to see the candidate's responses. It's all right there in front of you. So when reviewing assessment apps, it is common to want to understand a little bit more in depth about how it works and sort of the solutions adopting the app overcomes. So FI is PredictiveHire's artificial intelligence system and uses a blend of machine learning, natural language processing, and personality theory to assess and rank candidates based on the text answers that they give. And it basically places a focus on continuously learning through learning about your organization from the results of the candidate performance. So the data shapes, evolves, and refines your profile, which the candidates are assessed. So candidates are essentially assessed for skills, values, traits, personality, and much more. And they're also scored, ranked, and benchmarked as well. And to ensure the process is organization specific, you're able to select interview questions and activities, and there is a built-in guidance to minimize bias as well. So when reviewing the results, the candidates that received the score in the yes range represent the top 40% of candidates, maybe represents the middle 20% of candidates, and no represents the bottom 40% of candidates. When you sign up with PredictiveHire, you will also have access to the interactive portal, which allows real-time insights. You will be able to view your dashboard and the different vacancies you have open and the candidates within those vacancies, and you can also receive support as well. So if you would like to find out more, feel free to take a look at the First Interview by PredictiveHire app, but by visiting our SnapHire marketplace. And as I mentioned at the start, you can view the marketplace through the SnapHire marketplace tab of your SnapHire site. Take a look at the description tab to learn a little bit more about the app, and then you can view the Getting Started tab to see what you need to do to get started, essentially. And there are some screenshots as well and some videos there, and also a link to their website as well, should you want to go have a look on there. If you're interested in finding out even more about PredictiveHire after having a look at our SnapHire marketplace, the team are available for a chat. They can talk to you more in depth about what First Interview is, how it works, answer any questions that you have, or how it could work within your organization. They are also open to providing demonstrations, I believe, so you can see it in action from both the organization and candidate perspective. So that's also something you may want to consider. When you're ready to install it in SnapHire, the SnapHire team will, of course, be willing and able to help you through the process. Just again, when you're ready to install it, and we can also answer any questions you have about the installation process. So that's basically a high-level overview of what it is and how it works within SnapHire. So now is probably, I guess, a good time to open up the floor for questions. So we've had a few questions come through, but please feel free to type in any comments or questions now, and I'll pass over back to Nat, who will go through them, and we'll aim to answer them all together.
So we have already had some questions come in, which is great. The first one is, for this person's organisation, approximately 50% of candidates apply for their roles but are not fit for the role. I guess, Nick, what would be your recommendation around that? Like, do you think that that sort of role would be suited to using this sort of technology? Or yeah, I'll pass that over to you.
Yeah, no worries. Look, it's a good question, and we get this asked a lot, is, why assess all applicants when we already know that a large proportion of those applicants won't be successful? And I think, there's a couple of different responses I have for that, or why the value proposition upfront is better. Is one, what we've seen statistically over the last couple of years is, more often than not, organizations uncover latent talent that they didn't actually expect. So the ones that they would have through, let's say, a CV screen had already discounted as a no, end up actually being some of their strongest performers. We saw this in particular with one of our UK customers who hire for a particular type of salesperson, and they were hiring for a personality profile that they felt was the right personality profile. We encouraged them to use our solution, and as a result, they hired some people that were not that profile, as well as some people that was their profile. So they went against the recommendation. The people who went on to be their strongest performing were the people that PredictiveHire recommended, and not the profile that they preconceived. And I guess this is the importance of a solution that actually removes bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether it's a preconceived idea around what great looks like. What we definitely recommend with these roles, or with this solution, and where it works best, of course, is high volume, but it's also in areas that we consider what we call high volume, low skill. So roles whereby the differentiation of good to great for a person is their personality, is their behavioral attributes and communication skills and capability over, say, a technical competence. So if it's, say, a lawyer and you're trying to differentiate good lawyers from bad lawyers, the tool will not tell you which is a good lawyer, but it will tell you what is the best fit for your organization. But what we can say from our tool is sales roles, contact center, retail frontline, whether that's FMCG or high street, all the way through to aviation, we've been able to predict improved quality and performance of people through this assessment. So that would be my response, is that even though 50% you would likely decline, and that probably wouldn't change, it may be the composition of that 50% changes. The other aspect of that is that you give everyone an opportunity to go through the process. So it's also about, you know, candidate experience, delivering every candidate feedback, giving them an opportunity to really put their best foot forward.
And then I would assume that, Nick, you're less likely to get those serial appliers who just apply over and over again because they've had some really great feedback.
Correct. Look, you know, we certainly saw one of our customers is Qantas, obviously pre-COVID, enormous recruiter in terms of volumes, but also a really, you know, trusted and sought after brand to work for here in Australia. And we would see people literally applying constantly, same applicants when we first started off with them, and that slowly trickled down. Also, I just noticed there the same person asked about, you know, if a candidate applies for multiple roles, do they do multiple assessments? Only if the assessment and the role is different. And that's what we saw with Qantas, is that if it was the same role, we would provide them with their previously completed score to the customer for a period. And we agree that with the customer. That might be you reuse the score for 3 months and you don't offer them the opportunity to redo the assessment. It might be 6. Qantas had a very strict policy. It was 12 months. 12 months you could reuse the score, and you could only apply for the same job within 12 months. But if it's a different job family with a different assessment, we do recommend they complete it, because it will be a different set of questions and looking for a different profile to the first role.
Fantastic. And I think the same person has asked, they're mindful of the application process and the time to complete, and how much time would it take a candidate to complete?
Yeah, great question. So the average time to complete is 20.7 minutes to be exact. It works out close to just under 5 minutes a question for an applicant to complete. We do see variations by industry, but also variations by brand. So what we've certainly seen is where an organisation has a very strong employment brand, application times tend to be longer versus organisations that are perhaps less well known in the marketplace. What we've also noted is there's no correlation between time to complete and candidate satisfaction. So in fact, one of our customers who has very high time to complete, very well-known brand, very sought after, also actually has our highest candidate satisfaction globally.
Wow, fantastic, thank you. There are a few more questions, which is great that we've had so many questions come through. One, Jan has actually asked us, who sets the questions and what's the sort of process once someone engages with you, Nick?
Yeah, so the questions, so we work with the organisation. So in terms of setting up those questions, we do have standard questions per our standard role family. We change and vary these very regularly, but more often than not, what we will do is we'll work to understand what the role is, what the critical capabilities you look for, what we call your success DNA in terms of the critical capabilities and personality attributes. And then we'll recommend a profile in terms of that, those attributes, along with a series of questions. We'll then work with you to refine those questions, but also write them in such a way that it sounds and feels like your organisation. So we do this thing called customized preambles, but effectively where we add in text that sets the tone of a question. To give you an example, a question might be, tell me about a time you've had to make a customer's day better. Now that's a question, but then what we'd say is, you know, at Qantas, our customers are at the heart of everything we do. We want to deliver them an award-winning experience every day. Tell me about a time when you've had to make a customer's day better. So it's very important for us that they do sound and feel like your brand, and so that the candidate really is immersed in that organisation.
Fantastic, thank you. We have had a few questions come in around your pricing model and how that sort of works. I know that's probably a difficult one to ask, especially so broad, but I thought you might be able to share a bit of insight.
Yeah, sure. So the pricing model, look, it is per assessment, so it's based on volume. It increments significantly. So what I mean by that is the higher the volume of applicants, the cheaper it gets per applicant. to give you a broad range, and these are in Australian dollars, but you can roughly convert it where I think we're almost like for like in NZ these days. But to give you a broad range, it can be as little as 20 cents an assessment to as much as $15 an assessment. The key difference there is volume. The other thing which plays into pricing is years of contract. So if you subscribe 1 year, it's slightly higher. If you subscribe 2, 3, multi-years, we obviously discount as we go. What's worth understanding, our pricing is all inclusive. So there's no add-ons, there's no, oh, well, that's gonna cost this. It is as it is, and you get everything in that.
Thanks, Nick. We do also, and this probably ties into that, someone has asked, could you tell us more about the candidate insights and what sort of feedback is provided to the candidate? And then the final question was, does it automatically let someone know they wouldn't be successful?
Good two-part question. Okay, I'll answer the second part first. So our solution won't let them know automatically that they're unsuccessful. That is something you'd obviously need to do with inside the ATS. But what the feedback they'll get is effectively 6 insights that are based on their personality profile. So when we're assessing candidates through PredictiveHire, what we're doing is we're assessing them against the 6 Hexaco personality traits, as well as a series of behavioral traits that we pre-agree with you. These could be things like drive, accountability, teaming and collaboration, critical thinking, for example. But what we provide back to them in the feedback is very specifically around the actual personality attributes. So when we think about Hexaco, we're looking at honesty and humility, we're looking at extroversion, emotionality. Sorry, that's my husband watering plants in the background. The endless joys of working from home. We're looking at conscientiousness, openness, so open to change, to different experiences. So to give you an idea, an insight might be, you generally enjoy familiar routines, people and ideas. Change is something with which you are okay, but when you are less curious about something suggested to you, you may be perceived as closed-minded. You take on responsibility well and consider to be generally very dependable. In most situations, you're considered in your decision-making, and you usually enjoy a planned approach to your work and tasks. So we've utilized the Hexaco framework. We've obviously written specifics around that in terms of the feedback. They're generally strengths-based, so we don't tend to be very negative in the feedback, but we are constructive. So certainly we provide a coaching tip, for example, where this one's reflect on a recent situation when you felt hurt by someone's comments or actions. How did you feel? What did you say? And what happened when you reacted? And then it gives them some action around, practicing self-compassion and listening to your own thoughts, building the muscle of saying no and defining your boundaries, planning in decompression time. So it's quite a detailed report. I'm more than happy to share an example of it, which the SnapHire team can share with the participants. So you can kind of see a real life example. Obviously it will be mine, so I don't mind that you guys read it. It won't say to a candidate, you didn't get the job, but we do very specifically in the opening text can customize all that to what messaging you want to put. So, this is a bit of feedback. This is what we learnt about you. Whilst this is not an outcome, we will be back in contact with how you progress to the next stage, that kind of thing.
Wonderful. Thank you for so much detail. That's just so much great information coming through there. I think our final question was, what medium is used to conduct the interview?
Yeah, good question. So the medium, it's ultimately a link that they click on, and then it opens up a web browser. Now it can be done on a mobile phone. So I could do it on a mobile, I could do it on a desktop, and it's like a chatbot. So it's like having a conversation. Think about Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. It's like having a conversation in one of them. The chatbot greets them, asks them to put in some information, and then proceeds to explain the process and then ask them a series of questions, and they can respond either, as I said, typing it or typing it. So it's a conversational user interface using text.
Wonderful. I don't think we have any further questions. I just had one, so hopefully no one minds me asking a question. Most commonly, where do you see the efficiencies in using PredictiveHire? Would you sort of recommend, or would most of your clients take out that phone screen, that first interview piece, and then they would still have the hiring manager interview, or what do you see happen sort of commonly?
Look, it's a great question, and it varies with our customers depending on their as-is process, right? But generally, what we see is where you gain the most efficiency is if you have, say, an internal recruitment team, or if you utilize agencies who provide you a shortlist of candidates to progress, it's really truncating that process. So every single applicant, you're assessing and screening, and you're ultimately receiving a ranked and stacked shortlist, a merit list of your top performing applicants against the profile to your lowest performing. Most customers will have that done, and then what they'll progress through is either a hiring manager interview or a group or assessment center scenario, depending on the roles and their process, followed by offer. To give you an idea, Bunnings, who we're also a joint customer on, so Bunnings used us as part of their new process and their recruitment change with SnapHire. And in 1 year, they've been able to save 55,000 hours in screening. Now, this is their calculation, not ours. This was theirs, done by their HR team as part of the business case to use PredictiveHire. And how they were able to do that is, if you think previously, store leaders would say, receive maybe 100 applicants for a team member role, and they would need to be going through and screening those applicants and reviewing them. That's all done for them. They progress their top applicants. They have a meet and greet interview. So it's about a 30-minute interview, and then it progresses to hired. Obviously, there's checks and balances done through that process around rights to work, reference checks, etc., which the central team do. But ultimately, it's gone from what was a much more longer process and time involved for those store leaders who really need to be focused on operational execution, and they're now able to really focus on just taking through the best of the best through to that next stage. So we certainly recommend that.
Oh, I think we have another question. If a candidate has completed the interview after the time period, does it renew on their profile, or will the previous results still be visible?
Yeah, great question. So within the SnapHire environment, we'll reuse the profile for the time period that we agree with the customer. So that varies customer by customer. So some customers choose around 3 months, and that's normally what we recommend, around 90 days. So they've completed the first interview, and let's say they do that in December, and then they apply for another job in January that's identical and has the same assessment. They won't be required to complete the first interview again, and the results will be reused. Now, let's say they then apply again in February or March, and the results will have expired by then. They'll then be sent the interview link automatically. So this is done all automatically. You don't need to worry about it. The system will reuse. Of course, you have the choice and option not to reuse. So if you want every applicant to redo it, we can do that. And you have the option to configure how long that reuse is.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll just give it a moment to see if there's any further questions that come through. But I think we've definitely covered off a lot in this short period of time.
Yeah, really detailed answers. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you. So engaged and so passionate about your product. You can really sort of feel that as you talk. And I think it will be really exciting to see, or to hopefully see some more of our clients using your product. And I know that there's a lot of organizations out there who are really looking to find some efficiencies and to automate. And I think COVID's definitely sort of pushed that mandate forward. So
definitely, I was just about to say that, Nat, a lot of our our customers have definitely seen an increase in COVID. So a lot more volume hiring, a lot more sort of volume recruitment. So this is definitely a solution that can help that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've seen that across our entire client base too. You know, some clients, the volumes are now 10 times what they were, you know, pre-COVID. And, you know, not only does this deliver that real efficiency in that, but, you know, it's all of those people are getting something in return. And I think you really can't underestimate the power of giving candidates feedback. Now, even if it's not you did or didn't get the job, people leave with a really positive experience about the outcome, even when they don't. So, you know, don't actually get the role. And, you know, that's one of the things that I'm so passionate about this product, is that we can actually deliver to masses something that helps